After White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders was refused service at the Red Hen restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, because of her political beliefs, restaurant workers at the Red Hen are being offered sensitivity training on how to deal with conservatives. Red Hen servers and management will take classes to learn to recognize their implicit biases against conservatives and to note when they might be committing subtle microaggressions against conservatives, like putting on ski masks and attacking them with sticks to stop them from expressing their opinions, or ganging up on them in angry mobs and chasing them out of public venues while spitting on them and hurling four-letter words. Without this sensitivity training, such subtle micro-behaviors might go unnoticed because a bigoted American society has taught leftists that only their opinions are virtuous and therefore anyone who disagrees with them must be evil. Whereas, in fact, if you can't discuss your ideas without using four-letter words or resorting to cruelty, bullying, and violence, you may actually be the bad guy. At sensitivity training, Red Hen workers will be introduced to such concepts as toxic leftism, unearned self-righteousness, and anti-American dirtbaggery, as well as anti-American dirtbaggery resulting in the unearned self-righteousness of toxic leftism, also known as just being an all-around D-bag who can't get a lady a sandwich without working your great big stupid mouth. During sensitivity training, Red Hen employees will also watch video examples of inherent bias, such as newscasts on NBC and CNN. They'll also revisit historical injustices against conservatives, like the publication of the New York Times. We here at the Andrew Klavan Show hope that this training will teach employees and management at the Red Hen how to treat their fellow Americans with respect, after which we hope no one goes to their stinking, hate-filled restaurant ever again. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is the Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
All right, we are back after a particularly disturbing Klavanless weekend. We tried to get the great Michael Knowles to be with us, but we could only get the so-so Michael Knowles, who works here, and he'll be here to discuss. And Rob is shaking his head. Why do I mistreat the lad? So he'll be here to discuss an amazing story out of Harvard. You know, the whole thing that I've been trying, at this point, I really do feel like this, you tune in this show and you get tomorrow's news. I mean, we are now so far ahead of what's happening. And the reason is we're not following the narrative, we're following the narrative. We're not following what the press is telling us the narrative is. We are following what the narrative actually is. And that's why we're ahead of the game almost every day at this point. You know, the press is telling us basically the country's in crisis, the people are torn apart, the country is divided, we hate each other. None of that is true. They keep saying these are troubled times. These are not troubled times. These are good times during which the left is angry. That's all that's happening. This has happened. I've seen this at least twice in my life, two big times. One, Ronald Reagan came in. There were lines at the gas stations. We had inflation. We had unemployment. Everything was just really awful under the Jimmy Carter administration. Ronald Reagan came in, and it was day after day of we're going to war with Russia. The guy is a madman. He's an idiot. He's a blithering. He's a movie star. What does he know about the government? We thought, oh my gosh, it's terrible, it's a crisis. It wasn't a crisis. It was good times. It was the ship of state being turned around in the right direction, which is what the left hates, because they hate this country, they hate the West, they want their system to work, which will give them more power over ordinary folks like us. They do not want this to happen. The second time I saw it was Rudy Giuliani. He came into a New York that had really hit rock bottom. I mean, New York, you could not go out for a pack of gum without taking your life in your hands. I was there. The city was a cesspool. Giuliani came in every single day in the New York Times. He was a Nazi. He was a bigot. There was this one story where police misused a black suspect. And they had this story. Oh yeah, as they were beating him up, they said to him, "It's Giuliani time." Complete lie. That didn't happen. They didn't say that. I mean, they did abuse this guy, but they didn't say that. Giuliani was on it in a split second. He came down on the cops like that. He turned that city from one of the worst cities on earth to one of the best. And it was him. It was him and his police guys that he brought in, the police commissioners. And every single day, it was just like it is now. The crises, he's horrible, he said this and has obviously meant that, and he hates black people, the whole thing, it's all happening again. And why? So what's happening this time is because, like Giuliani and like Reagan, Trump will not stand down. He won't run away. He won't tell them that his conservatism is compassionate. He won't say he's going to be kinder and gentler. He just tells them what he's going to do, and he does it, and he stood up to them. Last week, they slung everything they had. They brought the full Katrina playbook. It's Donald Trump's fault that the border doesn't work. I mean, it's so obvious that this was going on during the Reagan administration. They threw everything at him, and not only, and then when he said, okay, you want an executive order saying we'll put the kids together as long as we can keep protecting the border, fine. He signs the executive order. That executive order, I do not think it's going to stand, but it just threw them for a loop because now they're stuck with a situation that only the legislature can solve. It's a law. It's a problem of bad law. And Trump is on the offensive. He's going after them. He's saying that Obama did this. He said Obama put him in cages and wrapped him in foil. That was one of his things. And he's just and he brought out what they call the angel parents. I personally hate this thing where they give everybody an emotional name. It's the angel parents. You know, it's the dreamers. I hate it, but I guess you got to play the game at this point. And he brings in the parents of children who have been killed by illegal immigrant criminals.
None of our kids had a minute to say goodbye. We weren't lucky enough to be separated for 5 days or 10 days. We're separated permanently.
Our separation, like everybody has said, is permanent. Sarah never gets to go on to be a wife, a mother. I brought my son. This is what I have left, his ashes. I wear his ashes in a locket. This is how I get to hug my son.
So Trump is fighting back on their terms. I mean, that's what, this is one of the things I feel so many of my fellow conservatives do not get this, especially the kind of never Trump guys. They do not get that the battle is not between Republicans and Democrats. The battle is between Americanism and the press. The battle is between those who believe in the Constitution, limited government, freedom for the individual, and powers at odds with one another, the states at odds with the feds, the Senate at odds with the House, the legislature at odds with the executive. That's what we want. We want them fighting with each other so we can be free. It is against people who believe in that versus the press, versus the socialist press. The press, the Democrats are run by the press. It's not the press. It's not the Democrats running the press. It's the other way around. And they don't understand that that's the fight. And that is what Trump is doing so incredibly well. So a CBS News poll comes out, and it shows that most people agree with Trump, build a wall. It shows that most people want the illegals deported. It said like 48%, but when you added all the numbers together, it was really a majority said somehow or other they've got to be sent back. It's not that people are unkind like me. I don't want to see the parents torn away from their children. I just want the border secure. That's all I want. I want us to decide who comes in. I want the legislature to get off their patoots and argue with each other and compromise with each other and make a better law and make a sensible way that we can defend our borders. And all the left wants is they want these new voters coming in, and all the people at the Wall Street Journal want, and I love that paper, but they are just wrong about this, is they want people to water their damn lawns. And that is what they're bringing in because they don't have to get minimum wage. They aren't protected like our workers. But it's ridiculous. It's not restrictionist to expect the law to make sense and the law to be enforced. That is not restrictionist. That's what the Wall Street Journal keeps calling it. So they lost. They brought it all. They brought the whole artillery. They brought everything they got, and Trump stood up to them, and now they are furious. So what do? They move to Plan B, which is bullying, mobsterism, and violence. And we will take a look at this in just a minute. So they brought the press, and that's their big weapon. The big weapon is the press, which creates the illusion that things are terrible. oh my God, our society is falling apart. Civil society is collapsing. Look around you. Is it in your town? Is it collapsing? No, it's just on the coast where the news is working its will, and everywhere where people fall for the crisis in the press. There's no crisis there's not even a crisis at the border. There's confusion, there's chaos. There's too long that the legislature has left this going. But right this minute, it just needs to be fixed. That's all that's happening. But because Trump won't stand down, the people are becoming mobsters. And when I say mobsters, I mean people who join together in a mob and terrorize people and encourage each other to do wrong. Sarah Sanders walks into the Red Hen restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, and they all got together and took a vote and told her she had to leave. Now, you'll notice, by the way, that Sarah Sanders was ready to pay for her meal, unlike the trespassers who were at Starbucks. She didn't defy the police when they asked her to leave. It didn't happen, and the police didn't have to come. Like the trespassers at Starbucks defied the police. But somehow, when the trespassers at Starbucks were ejected, that was a racial incident. This is not an incident of bigotry. When the guy at the Masterpiece Cake Shop said, you know what, I cannot lend my artistry to a gay wedding, that was a travesty. But throwing a woman out because she works for the administration, she's a public servant, that's fine. And it's all this bullying of women. I mean, the Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was forced out of the Mexican restaurant, right? We saw that. This is another one. Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi went to see the documentary about Mr. Rogers that's come out. Mr. Rogers, who was what would you call him, the ambassador of civility, right? He was a guy who would talk about bullying, would talk about treating people properly while she's standing online. Listen to her description of what happened to her.
And a woman approaches me in the ticket line and starts screaming that I was personally ripping babies out of the arms of mothers. And they were videoing me. And I said, I'm glad you're videoing this because I've never agreed with separating the mothers and the babies. And I said, Congress has to act on this matter. And they said, no, it's you. These babies are being kept. And then, because I was talking normally to them, they didn't know what to do. So then 3 huge guys came up and started probably an inch from my face, screaming at me every word in the book, cursing as loud as they could. So then my trooper came up, and my boyfriend and I got our tickets, we're headed in, and then they ran in and circled me where I could not get into the theater. They stopped me. So he came up then and stopped them. So then we went in the theater, thought it was diffused. We're up getting popcorn at the concession stand, and they came up again, just every curse word in the book. And they said to him, hey, Blue Eyes, come on, aren't you going to protect her? Using a lot of, a lot of other words, too.
So they're trying to start a fight with her boyfriend. They're terrorizing this woman. A mob is terrorizing this public servant, this lady. They're surrounding her, they're spitting on her, they're cursing at her, okay? And they think they're the good guys. That's the amazing thing. That is the magic of leftism. The black magic of leftism is that it allows you to think you're the good guys while you're wearing a ski mask and hitting somebody on the head with a stick because he wants to make a speech. The black magic of leftism is that it allows you to think that you're a good person while you're terrifying and terrorizing a young woman. Luckily, I mean, there are these lunatics out there trying to incite this kind of violence, but luckily none of them is like an elected official. Oh, wait, Maxine Waters, this woman really needs to be taken out of Congress, possibly in a straitjacket. Here is she's giving a speech to people, and listen to them cheering for what she says. She is encouraging this kind of mob violence and terror. And by the way, left-wingers, remember, when you start to play by these rules, the other side starts playing by them too, and it's not going to be pretty. But listen, this is Maxine Waters. This is an unbelievably irresponsible moment by someone elected to Congress.
Already, you have members of your cabinet that have been booed out of restaurants, who have protesters taking up at their house, who's saying no peace, no sleep. No peace, no sleep. And guess what? We're going to win this battle because while you try and quote the Bible, Jeff Sessions and others, you really don't know the Bible. God is on our side. On the side of the children, on the side of what's right, on the side of what's honorable, on the side of understanding that if we can't protect the children, we can't protect anybody. And so let's stay the course. Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Yeah, that's what Jesus preached, right? If you see someone who disagrees, if thou seest someone who disagrees, that's the honorable thing that Jesus preached. If thou seest someone with whom you have a political disagreement, terrorize them and surround them in a mob. And it is, I swear, the black magic of leftism that these people think they're the good guys. They are cheering this. They're sitting there cheering this lunatic who shouldn't be in Congress anyway, should really be in a padded cell. And they're cheering, and they think they're the good guys. It is a wonder. I mean, you know, Peter Fonda did this thing. All this stuff in Hollywood where he had that tweet where he said we should rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles and see if mother will stand up against the giant a-hole she is married to. He apologized to that after, like, I assume he sobered up. He apologized for that. But still, I mean, when those words come out of your mouth, how do you still, you know, I always say anger is the devil's cocaine. And what I mean by that is it makes you think you're being righteous because you feel this righteous anger. This is what's happening to them. And here's the key thing. Because Trump has an expertise, he has a power to make them expose themselves for who they are slowly, slowly coming around to show that it's not Trump they hate. It's you. When Hillary Clinton came out and talked about the deplorables, and that really did help for her to lose the election, when she attacked the voters, she was speaking for the media. She was speaking for Hollywood. She really was. I mean, take a look at this. Here's Rob Reiner, Mr. Hollywood, right? Big, powerful Hollywood director, and his wife. They're talking to Joy Reid. Listen who he's blaming here. It's not Trump they hate. It's you.
Let's cut to the chase. This is about racism. This is pure and simple racism. That's all this is. He's hoping that the people who support him will be ginned up and running to the polls to make sure that brown people don't come into America. That's exactly what's going on here.
The political people on his team believe that the base of the Republican Party will be more moved by separating brown children and parents than they will, for instance, by his tax cut. Because that's not what they're selling. They're telling him, no, this is the issue that makes you look strong.
Because I hate to repeat what he just said, but this is based on racism, period, as they like to say. That's all this is. They don't want more brown people coming into this country and taking their jobs. Immigration is lower than it's ever been. There's no crisis at the border, and it's just an inhumane, unconscionable act that they did by separating children. And I have to tell you, my mother was in Auschwitz. She got separated from her entire family, lost her entire family. I never thought I would live to see something like that, particularly in this country, ever again in my lifetime.
It's amazing. I can't think of any other reason you might want to enforce the laws at your border. I can't. It's just about brown, because we don't have any brown people in America. You know, we want to keep this as a lily white country. And you know, what the hell is she talking about? You know, what country is she in? What imaginary land is she in? But it's you and Joe Scarborough and Donnie. I don't even know. Donnie Bush is like an ad executive. Why is he a commentator? Did I miss something where he became an expert in something? Anyway, listen to this conversation on Morning Joe. And I know it's MSNBC. I don't like to pick on them because they're an openly left-wing station. But I just want to show that it's not Trump they're hating on. It is you. It is us. It is the deplorables. Listen to this.
We can no longer say Trump's the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you're the bad guy. Mm-hmm. If you vote for Trump, you are ripping children from parents' arms. The mistake that we've made in the past is look at that bad guy over there, look at that bad guy. What the Democrats have to do is make the next election a referendum on not who Trump is, but who you are. And that's the big difference. You can no longer now as a voter, because it's now not about taxes. It's not even about some abstract term of immigration or nationalism. If you vote for Trump, then you, the voter, you, not Donald Trump, are standing at the border like Nazis going, you here, you here. And I think we now have to flip it. And it's a given the evilness of Donald Trump. But if you vote, you can no longer separate yourself. You can't say, well, he's okay, but. And I think that gymnastics and I think that jujitsu has to happen.
He's been openly racist, just like we said back in December of 2015, openly racist. And if you support him, then you're supporting that and you are that. It's that simple.
So you see the logic of this, right? The logic of this is this. It's because there can be no other reason to enforce the law except racism. There can be no other reason to want your borders to be secure except racism. It is perfectly reasonable to surround women in movie theaters and gas stations, as Maxine Waters says, in restaurants, and bully them out of those places if they're in the cabinet. But it's not just them, right? Because if you voted for them, then you're complicit. So now it's all right to do this stuff to you as well. You can see where this is going. Somebody's going to get hurt, and then it's going to be, oh, I don't know why. It's really Trump's fault. He inspired. It's really his fault. It's going to be their fault. They are working this up to a moment of violence, and it's not going to be pretty because, believe me, some of us are perfectly willing and able to fight back. And once they start that fight, they are not going to like it. And I'm not going to like it either. I do not want to see this country at that kind of odds. The fact is, things are going well. Trump is doing a good job. I've said all my complaints about Trump. I'm not going to go through them again, but Trump is doing a good job. He's exhibiting leadership. He is breaking things up a little bit. He's changing things. I'm still on the fence about what he's doing with trade because I want to see where it goes. I want to see how much of it is negotiation. But this country is doing better than it has done in a long, long time. And these guys are angry because their policy, because they went through 8 years of failure with their king, their God, their Messiah, and it didn't work. They lied to us. They let him corrupt the government. And now this new guy's coming in and he's doing all this stuff they hate, and it's working. And so no wonder they're screaming and yelling, but calling for violence against people and attacking the voters instead of the official that you dislike, it really is disgusting. And I just have to add this one thing, and then we're going to get to Michael Knowles about this Harvard stuff. This Time magazine cover, so classic, so typical. It's all about the narrative. They put up this magazine, little kid crying, Donald Trump looking down at her, and it says, "Welcome to America." It's a big red splash cover. Turns out the little girl was from Honduras. Her mother abandoned her family, carried her illegally across the border. She wasn't separated. The whole story was fake. The whole story was fake. And they have Time magazine's editor-in-chief, Edward Felsenthal, he defends it. He says, yeah, well, it's the old story. The facts were wrong, but the narrative was right. I mean, like I said, I'm a novelist. For me, I can have the facts wrong and the narrative right. If you're a journalist, the facts are the narrative. The facts determine the narrative. It's not the other way around. Listen to this guy tie himself in knots of dishonesty, defending what was just an entire lie, a visual lie that his magazine, Time magazine, told.
We chose the photo because this little girl became the face of this story on front pages and home pages and TV screens
but
and
maybe
Facebook
she
feeds.
Shouldn't have been the face of this story if she wasn't separated from her mom.
Well, as John just said and has said all along, none of us in the media who used the photo knew what had happened to the girl after this precise moment. And I actually think part of the power of the image is that unknown. This was a girl who's coming to America, has just completed one terrifying journey, and whatever its contours, whatever happens to her, faces another very frightening journey as well.
But by Monday of this week, we knew that she hadn't been separated from her mom. In fact, on Tuesday, you all issued a correction to a web story about that.
I don't believe the case. We did make an error, which obviously I regret and hate making errors anytime.
Sure.
But we made an error on a web story early in the week, not part of the cover package, in which we said that the mother had been separated, and we quickly and transparently corrected that. We didn't know, nobody using this photo knew on Monday or Tuesday that they had not been separated.
Well, we knew, according to the government, they had not been separated.
We just knew there was a crying child, and anywhere a child cries, Donald Trump, it gets the blame. I mean, that's basically it is. The logic it burns. The logic here is so amazing because If the narrative sets the story, then the facts can't penetrate these guys. Even after the facts, even after they find out, oh, we got the story wrong, no apology, nothing. It's like we know what the narrative is, but I don't need no stinking facts. We don't need no stinking facts. We put up cover to attack Trump. That's what these guys are doing, and they cannot see it themselves. It is really wonderful. It is the black magic of leftism that they can think they're the good guys while lying to their audience. It is just an amazing thing. All right, that's the end of our show. We're done. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is the Andrew Klavan Show. Tomorrow, who we got tomorrow?
Sebastian Gorka.
Oh, Gorka's back. He should be on fire, that guy. That should be really entertaining. Be there then. We'll see you then. Bye. The Andrew Klavan Show is produced by Robert Sterling.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd.
At one point, two young, white, teenage men asked to take a picture with me. They're maybe like 16, 17. And then they said, our dad wants to meet you. And I turned around. Paul Ryan was walking towards me.
Oh, okay.
And he came over, just grabbed my hand, and I'm shaking his hand. I don't know what to do. And he said, can I have a picture with you? And I said, no way, man. And I look over and his kids are still standing right there. And I feel very conflicted about this at this moment.
Because it's not their fault.
It's not their fault, but at the same time, they should probably learn that if they like a movie or song, the person who made that probably doesn't like their dad that much.
Wow. And Paul Ryan, such a moderate that, more conservative Republicans call him a rhino these days.
He is... wow, that is something. And the fact that everybody think that's okay that is deeply troubling. So Paul Ryan standing there in the crowd goes, ooh, so you ran into Voldemort. Paul Ryan?
Paul Ryan, are you kidding me?
And I said, no, dude. And the crowd goes, yeah, because you wouldn't want to get your picture taken with that evil Nazi. Holy crap.
He's like, Joe Manchin is as a Democrat. The senator from West Virginia. He's barely a Democrat at all. It's not even clear to me that he is one. Paul Ryan's the other. This is something listen.
This is really troubling.
Let's simplify it for those of you who haven't had your first cup of delicious addicted coffee yet. You must hate people you disagree with. If you see them, you must scream at them. If you run a business, you must not serve them. We must hate those we disagree with. There's an opinion piece in the USA Today.
God dang it. How have we gone from we didn't even know what the politics of our neighbors were to we will not associate with somebody because of their politics?
We will kick them out of our business. Now, granted, Sarah Sanders is not like a Republican voter. I'll grant you that.
Sure.
But like many political splits that turn violent, it starts with the big, unmistakable leaders of it and moves down to the common people hating each other. This piece by Glenn Reynolds in the USA Today I thought is really good about the soft civil war that's already begun. And he cites the Sarah Sanders thing, getting booted out of a restaurant in Virginia. And the aftermath of that has been quite jazzy, as you might expect, Jack, with people marching past the restaurant and shouting and trolling them with fake reservations and yelling out of their car and support weighing in. And so they had to close the restaurant because I couldn't even do business because everybody's so fired up. But anyway, back to this Glenn.
Well, they brought that on themselves by doing something stupid.
Right. This Glenn Reynolds piece, he references a Bloomberg opinion column called What Democratic Rage Would Look Like that said, I think we're at the beginning of a soft civil war. I don't know if the country gets out of it whole. And they talked about if Democrats lose the midterm, or maybe if they don't, liberals have a great deal of cultural, academic, and economic heft, stretching from Hollywood to Harvard. They mentioned some Hollywood powerhouses saying they don't want to work for Fox because of Fox News. There are endless variations on such a power play. If Democrats opt to use their power more aggressively, breaking rules, the soft civil war hardly seems unlikely. They mentioned Hollywood's basically turned its products and its award shows into showcases for the resistance. Americans are already sorting themselves into communities that are predominantly red or blue. And in heavily blue Washington, D.C., Trump staffers find that a lot of people don't want to date them because of their politics, et cetera, et cetera. Then you got the Christian Nielsen thing. Christian Nielsen trying to grab some Mexican food, and protesters waving signs that say, "No human is illegal," screeching at her so she couldn't eat her food. This is something. I like this line. Will it get worse? Probably. To have a soft civil war, soft or otherwise, takes two sides. But as tweeter Thomas H. Crown notes, it's childishly easy in these days to identify people in mobs and then to dispatch similar mobs to their homes and workplaces. Eventually, he notes, it becomes protesters all the way down, and if we haven't figured out yet that can lead to political violence, we're dumb. We carefully erected civil peace to avoid this sort of devolution to a mob. It is a great civilizational achievement, and it is intensely fragile. I would agree completely. Marriage counselors, this is a really good piece. Marriage counselors say that when a couple view on one another, remember the one thing we learned that's fatal to a marriage, the one emotion that a marriage cannot endure is contempt. When a couple view one another with contempt, it's a top indicator that the relationship is likely to fail. Americans who used to know how to disagree with one another without being mutually contemptuous seem to be forgetting this. And the news media, which promote shrieking outrage in pursuit of ratings and page views, are making the problem worse. I would also throw in Donald J. Trump is absolutely making the problem worse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That goes, I suppose we ought to say that. I was going to say it goes without saying, but maybe we should say it anyway. He is no doubt exacerbated something that was already going that direction.
Sure. He's a participant in it, as are plenty of people on the right.
But it will continue after he's gone, is my guess.
Oh, yeah. But this is really troubling. And,
God, that whole Paul Ryan thing, that is incredible.
Yeah, and the reaction of the crowd. Paul freaking Ryan, are you kidding me? He's so objectionable. You can't smile and take a picture with him. He's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He's a moderate Republican.
When he's there with his kids.
Right. That's ugly. You know what it is? I use the term adolescent. It's, you're so gung-ho about your thing. You got to signal it all the time, man. And, it seems so like 19-year-old college freshman wearing a friggin' Che Guevara T-shirt. You know what it is, though? More than that, it's uncivilized to not be able to say, oh, look, there's one of our political opponents in the restaurant. Listen to me. You gather up the waitstaff and you say, I know some of you disagree with this person. We're running a restaurant here. We're doing our jobs. You're going to do your job to the best of your ability, no matter else who is here. Does anybody have any questions? Cool. Go do your jobs. That's the speech they get at Joe's restaurant.
Well, I don't get it. I think Nancy Pelosi's a disingenuous liar who I disagree with on everything. But if I worked at a restaurant and she came in, I wouldn't even hesitate to be nice to her and say, what would you like to drink?
Madam Speaker, welcome to the restaurant.
Well, I can't even imagine acting any other way.
Because you're civilized. What's the sister word of civilized? Civilization. A civilization is a controlling of our more brutal animal impulses and saying, no, listen, if we're all going to get along and not stab each other over dumb S, we're going to act civilized. What we're seeing here is devolution. We're devolving away from civilization.
Well, that Seth
and
Rogen
I blame
clip,
the direct election of senators.
That Seth Rogen clip really troubles me.
Yeah, that's something.
Well, the way he tells the story, so clearly by the tone of his voice, can you believe Paul Ryan thought I would take a picture with him? So it's
right.
He thinks everybody agrees that's just, it would be insane for you to pose for a picture with Paul Ryan because he's the devil. And the crowd, ooh, he even asked for a picture. I mean, that's troubling.
Oh, yeah, it is. Wow.
Oof.
Militarization of American politics. You must demonize your enemy. You must hate them. You must attack them. even though your enemy is your neighbor who just sees the world a little differently than you, has different ideas about what government policy ought to go on. You need to hate them for that. We're a sick people. I tell you what.
This is not going to go a good direction. I don't think these are, anomalies.
And I don't think we've peaked. I don't think we're near it.
These are not anomalies. They're indications of a trend, and we have not peaked.
Well, we got a great email on this that I really loved, and I wanted to share with you. We have an interview coming up in a moment or two. It's a bitterly, ironically funny way to look at this. I'll hit you with it before Marshall gets to the news, I promise. But we're going to get a quick note from Adam White of the Hoover Institution next about that big privacy ruling that came out at the end of last week, the cell phone data and the rest of it, and what it means to us.
They need a warrant to get your information, thank goodness. That was a 5-4 decision. Stay tuned to the Armstrong and Getty Show.
Armstrong and Getty.
The conscience of the nation.
The Armstrong and Getty Show.
Wow, I'm looking up. I just saw a woman in the full-on beekeeper's outfit where they stare out the little slot.
Yeah.
Trying out a car. So they have to drive their cars dressed like that?
Well, if you are part of the most fundamentalist year 800 sect of Islam, yes.
So women can drive now, but you still have to cover your entire body except for your eyeballs.
A sect of Islam that only made a comeback in the early 70s. So, anyway. So, listen, we're talking about the militarization of American politics as exemplified by the booting of Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her party out of a little restaurant in Virginia, the screeching at the Secretary of Homeland Security as she tried to eat Mexican food, the refusal to take pictures of your Seth Rogen, there's another one, too. Oh, John Legend is tweeting obscenity-laced screeds at Paul Ryan again for tweeting out a Father's Day video about how fatherhood changed him, how he shouldn't dare do that while the children are being separated on the border, blah, blah, blah. And the overall trend that you have to absolutely hate people you disagree with and have contempt for them, which is the one emotion that a relationship cannot survive.
Well, the not serving Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I would never do that, and I would fire my employees if they refused to serve her. But she is, at least she's the face of Donald Trump and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Paul, if you're not going to get your picture taken as an actor with Paul Ryan, then you just refuse to be involved with anybody who's not your politics.
Right.
Apparently. And the crowd thought that was perfectly okay.
Right.
That's weird.
Well, because he has contempt for Paul Ryan or believes that he's such a terrible person. The policies are so horrific, even though they're like, this is a center-right country.
But we've been talking about these polls for long before Donald Trump came on the scene of how you go back through the years. Back in the day, would you mind if your son or daughter married somebody of the opposite political party? Nobody cared.
Right.
Now everybody cares deeply. In fact, that's a major change in the way we structure society.
25, 30 years ago, people would have chuckled at the very question.
What is it? I don't know. I don't have the slightest idea. What difference does it make?
It doesn't matter. Right. As long as they're happy together, as long as they treat each other well. And now, God, that's astonishing. And the president, if you're not up on this, tweeted...
Is Donald Trump.
About the Red Hen restaurant that booted out Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The Red Hen restaurant should focus more on cleaning its filthy canopies, doors, and windows.
Wow.
Badly needs a paint job.
Oh, my God.
Rather than refusing to serve a fine person like Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I always had a rule, if a restaurant is dirty on the outside, it's dirty on the inside. So here the sitting POTUS, the most powerful man in the world, is stating that this restaurant is dirty and you shouldn't eat there.
Instead of going with some sort of healing... If we've reached the point where restaurants won't serve members of the opposite political philosophy, then we've got a real problem. Something like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's my question. You know what my question is? Whatever happened to the high road? So, a couple of emails.
I don't think it crosses his mind. I don't think how could I take advantage of this and do some healing doesn't cross his mind.
So, a couple of emails showing you a variety of responses. I hope President Trump turns his IRS on the owners of these lefty restaurants the way Obama turned his IRS on the Tea Party. Well, as we pointed out last week, Dennis, it was actually John McCain who is a big engine with the Democrats. They were working on it together of trying to tear down the Tea Party, mainstream Republicans. But it's a pretty good shot. I get it. And then you got this. Huzzah for the red hen, writes frequent correspondent Ryan from Houston. We already have a national show. Dear Big Freedom, this this'll be awesome. I say huzzah to the red hen for keeping out Sanders. I say huzzah to the baker that won't bake a gay wedding cake. I say huzzah to the coffee shop that kicked out a pro-lifer. I say huzzah to any private business that wants to discriminate in any way they choose. Let's stop shoving discrimination in the darkness and let it see the disinfection of sunlight. Open up a coffee shop that doesn't serve blacks, Republicans, or boys named Sue, and make it known. Then when it goes out of business, people will know it's not a good business plan. Or perhaps it will thrive and we will become calmer through chosen segregation. Either way, let your discrimination be known so you won't be butthurt when it happens. Wow, so the argument, let's take it to the extreme because it's going to go there anyway. Let's just get it done and then all wake up and realize, oh my God, we're all miserable and hate each other and this is no way to run a country. You know what, Ryan, I don't know if you're serious. There are times I think, no, you've got to you got to press the brakes down and stop this ugly trend. And times I think, you know what? All right. Let's see how this goes. You think that's a good idea? You want to run your society that way? Let's let it rip and see where it takes us. Vladimir Putin is winning. Trying to sow the seeds of hatred and contempt and discontent amongst our peoples.
Well, like I said,
with the willing participation of our peoples.
Variety of polls and trend lines. It was happening before Trump and Putin. I don't know exactly what kicked this off. Some people point to talk radio, Rush Limbaugh. I don't know. I don't know what sent us this direction, but it's been growing in my adult lifetime. And we're to a real crisis point now, although I do think, like you said, it's going to go further.
Yeah. But I totally get the appeal of you're trying to be civilized and they're punching your people in the face. And you really, 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 rhetorically speaking, or booting people out of the restaurant-ly speaking, you want to punch them in the face. I get that 100%. I would suggest you're better off staying on the high road. I mean, according to Jesus and Martin Luther King and Gandhi and many others, who are like the greatest heroes of mankind in most cases. But I tell you what, you get punched in the face a couple of times, you really want to punch somebody back. Witness the violent left, the Marxist left in the Bay Area, California, attacking peaceful ralliers they didn't like, claiming that the ralliers or the speakers on a college campus were the real fascists, and they had to be beat down and have their heads smashed in the name of preventing fascism. At some point, the right-leaning people said, oh, yeah? Guess what? We know how to punch people in the face, too, and they did it.
So,
and you know what? I tell you what, and I hate to undermine my own point, but it was only then that the authorities in these courageous towns truly stepped in to protect people from getting their heads split open.
So I saw some Democratic...
looking at you, Mayor of San Jose, you contemptuous coward.
Big D Democratic strategists talking about...
I'm not contemptuous, contemptible. I apologize.
Strategists talking about Democrats are concerned that all this sort of stuff, Seth Rogen, Stephen Colbert, Saturday Night Live, Robert De Niro, all that sort of stuff is going to get Trump reelected. It's a lot of and they're right. A lot of the strategists think that that's doing them way more harm than good. And there's no doubt that that's true.
Well, you mentioned the 90% approval among Republicans. What we're talking about is why. That's why.
Absolutely.
I mean, the policies is a significant part. It's not a tiny part, but it's not all of it.
Did anybody see the front page Sunday New York Times cover story where they're interviewing various Trump voters? They started with a lawyer woman who is bothered by a lot of the stuff Trump does, but she's more bothered by Robert De Niro and Saturday Night Live. So she's going to vote for Trump. That's the response, and it's a much bigger response than kicking Huckabee Sanders out of a restaurant.
Right.
is going to be Trump will be reelected on this stuff alone.
Yeah.
If nothing else. That's crazy where we're going. And I honestly don't believe that it's going to end when Trump leaves his office, whether it's 2 years or 6 years.
Yeah, this gal they interview, who's not a MAGA hat wearer or anything like that, says all nuance and all complexity, and these are complex issues, are completely lost, describing overblown reactions from the president's critics. Makes me angry at them, which causes me to want to defend him.
Yeah, that's where we are.
So I need to tell you more about the iconic photo of the screeching little girl who moved a nation's hearts and is not at all what it seemed like.
Well.
But first, let's take a fond look back at the week that was. It's Cow Clips of the Week.
I don't think it's my job to prove the bias impacted the investigation. I think it's his job to prove that it did not.
To immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force.
It's turned into, basically a red light district, a homeless camp, an open-air drug market.
I read today about a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome who was taken from her mother and put in a cage. I read about...
How dare you?
Here is a complete disc jockey show with all the modern pace of today's exciting radio.
The Armstrong and Getty Show.
So what makes CNN's panels better than the rest? Let's start with the most important thing. You want a spirited debate. If the panelists can hear each other talk, you've already failed.
You have no respect for Mrs. Trump. You have no respect for his children. You have no respect for his family. Because this has nothing to do with him as a candidate. Nobody goes back in your past and picks up something that has nothing to do with your present time.
See, CNN doesn't waste time trying to solve a crisis or educate the viewer. No, their priority is producing a show that'll get them millions of clicks on their YouTube page. Look at that. Those are Pornhub numbers. Sorry, that's not fair. I shouldn't associate such a disgusting industry with porn.
Yeah, that's pretty good. CNN putting an S show on the air to try to get clicks.
No kidding.
Not trying to inform anybody.
God, they're unwatchable. Yeah. That's so terrible. So many people, thanks so little time. Go to ArmstrongandGetty.com. Drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us, mailbag at ArmstrongandGetty.com.
Somebody really enjoyed your, well, this has been a loving tribute to Charles Brown. See you Monday. God bless America.
Well, kids, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank Sideshow Mel, Corporal Punishment, Tina Ballerina, and from Knots Landing, Miss Donna Mills. Oh, she was a sport. We've had lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of fun. Now the time has come to go. If this silkcon was found dead in his bed tomorrow, I'd be in heaven still doing this show. See you some other time.
Armstrong and Getty, the voice of the West.